the Employers Confederation of the Philippines started its annual meeting today. While participants speculated on how much regional wage boards would increase minimum wages in the next few days, there was also discussion about how to accelerate growth and investment and create more jobs. One of the speakers at the conference is our guest tonight, John Forbes, Senior Advisor of the American Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. Mr. Forbes, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Good. Thank you, Coco.
Before we go to the long-term questions, let's begin with what we saw in that first report about wages. And as we talk about this, I'd like to call up some statements that you've made that your program has made regarding wages. So they're asking for wages to go up by as much as 125 or 75 pesos. You're essentially saying wages is something we have to keep down.
Well, I think what we said in the report, which is called Arangkada, moving faster, accelerating the growth of the economy, is to be competitive. And at least for foreign investors, perhaps less so for domestic investors, although they have competition coming in from abroad, particularly with imported products now and the FTAs the Philippines has joined. It's a question of what it costs a businessman to produce a good. Electricity is high here. Transportation costs are high because infrastructure is poor, and labor is higher for some reason than it is in Thailand, Vietnam. The wages here are 4 times as high. This is not a problem for many of our companies because we pay what the market is, frequently several times the minimum wages. But they're set by the market, not by the government.
But it's a problem for the smaller companies. Or companies that have a lot of minimum wage workers.
The total labor force is 36 million workers. Only 20% are in the formal sector. Only that 20% would benefit from the rise in the minimum wage. And as economists, Filipino economists point out, the effect of rises in minimum wage are inflation and drive smaller companies into the informal sector. So the odd result of too much of a minimum wage is it actually increases unemployment.
And or decreases taxes as well.
Well, and public revenue.
Okay, let's go to the recommendations now of this Arangkada program of yours. Arangkada, of course, means to accelerate growth.
Yes.
And let's talk about the first one, for example. You want 9% GDP growth within 5 years, or a sustainable 9% growth. That's about double of where we are now.
Well, it sounds high.
We haven't hit it in 30 years.
I know. It's for the shock value. But you hit 7.3% recently. And if you look around the neighborhood, the Philippines is not in the middle of nowhere. It's in the fastest growing area of the world historically. 9 of the countries around here have been growing at a high rate.
Why haven't we been able to do that, and how can we do it this time around?
Well, there's a cushion that comes from remittances. If you look at the increase in remittances in the first decade of this century, it's enough to generate just by itself about 4% GDP growth. So what needs to be done on top of that is restructuring and focusing on the sectors where the country has comparative advantage to make those grow. I was at the ICIP conference this morning, and the Vice President Binay spoke to it, and he made a statement with respect to OFWs. He wants to see the economy grow in a way in which Filipinos will have a choice about working abroad, not go abroad out of necessity.
I mean, we've heard different leaders say that. Even Mrs. Arroyo said the same thing. I guess the question is, why haven't we been able to achieve that kind of growth? And what kind of thing can we do now or in the next year or so that would spark it?
Well, I think there have to be reforms. I think the government has to be bold in making reforms that will get the attention of international investors as well as domestic investors. The overall investment rate in the Philippine economy is only 15%. It's half what it should be.
One of the things that the government and the private sector is talking a lot about now is PPPs, private-public partnerships, BOT programs, or in essence, infrastructure. You want to double the government's infrastructure spending?
Well, to 5%, it's about 2.5%, and that's the average of comparable economies. One thing we do in Arangkada, which is available, I should say, to all of your viewers for free on a website, and if I may advertise that website, it's www.investphil.com. philippines.info. It can be downloaded there. But certainly, it's much too low. Everybody agrees to that. We're stuck in traffic. We are not happy with one of the airport terminals at NAIA. NAIA overall is crowded. The ports, many of them are underinvested in, et cetera, et cetera.
How confident are you that the government's PPP program will get this jump started?
Well, PPP, the Philippines, as you know, was a pioneer with the BOT.
When it was called BOT.
BOP, BOT, they're all acronyms, but they have the same meaning, which is if a country is rich like China, then they are spending government money on infrastructure very quickly. They don't have right-of-way issues. They just build. The Philippines does not have that luxury, and the limited revenue the government wants to put in social programs. So the PPP structure is there, and it can work. There is technical assistance being provided now.
Does it worry you that it seems to be a bit delayed? I mean, last year they were saying there would be X number of projects by the first half. Now we're told the first one will probably be in July, etc.
I think they're over-ambitious in their rhetoric, but they're correct in their policy direction. We've seen a complete deficit, a neglect of PPP projects for 2 administrations since the Ramos administration. So it's heartening to see this occur. Now, I hope that they're open to international investment, that we don't get hung up on this 60-40 issue of public utilities, because frankly, there are legal precedents for you can separate the project proponent, as we have with power plants, as we have with the MRT-3, so a foreign company can come in and do that, and then the public utility can be the interface with the public.
You started out by mentioning the phrase shock value. I'd like to call up a list of what your 10-year results, what you say will be the results of all of these recommendations after 10 years. You're talking about $75 billion in FDI. That's per year. Or sorry, over that period.
Over 10
right.
years.
Which is a very far cry from the $1 or $2 billion we get.
Well, it got almost up to $3 billion 4 years ago. And $2 billion, well, there's been a recession. I think the trends are upward. The challenge for everyone in the Philippines is to push it upward faster. It's possible.
This is not just shock value.
I mean, the money is there. The money is coming in the region. Vietnam's been getting it. Thailand has made quite high recovery. Indonesia is getting about $15 billion a year. Philippines deserves a lot better.
Okay. Mr. Forbes, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Good. Pleasure to be here.